oversees the governance. In most co-ops, the governance, the board then selects a general manager who sees the day-to-day. In a lot of our emerging co-ops, they are working boards, so they do have a lot more hands-on. Yeah, I think it's good. And then some of the advantages, we mentioned the length. They are perpetual forms of businesses as long as we've done our job and we've set them up so the next generations or the new members can always keep it going. Membership owned, benefited, and should have a profit if we've also done our job correctly, in the sense that the profit can be cash if you're doing something where you're selling services and stuff like that. But we actually see more profit is in that social side. We're covering the needs of the community, or we're building that service out, so that capital is often, and that return is often looked at more of, we've met that need in our community, not necessarily the cash back in our pocket. But some of our ad guys have really been returning some really nice checks lately, so there is usually some return.
Mountain View said they put how many dollars back in pocket? It's a lot.
Yes, Mountain View just returned $27 million in the last 5 years to the membership. Now that's a 107-year-old business that is buying farm tractors, so please don't think your co-op's going to make $27 million. So a couple things on the cooperative structure, specifically on housing. Co-ops are not charity. They are not nonprofits. Especially in Montana, housing investment co-ops, the ones that we're talking about are called cooperative associations. I think I just jumped ahead on the slide. And they are for-profit entities. Now again, you'll hear the term not-for-profit a lot because we're not about that profit as much as getting the members what they need. But capital really comes from the equity of membership first. But they are a form of corporation, so we do have banks that can lend to them. You can take membership loans. There are some grants. I am not a big person that promotes grant funds, but there's like the OR funds right now at the state. So like in the planning stages and stuff along that lines. Another thing to keep in track that kind of separates us from other corporations is the tax structure. If you are doing one that has more of a profit, you can either pass that taxes on to the individual members and their dividends, or it stays in the corporate level, so you're not taxed twice. And then earnings, cooperative share their profit or their losses, but you do have the same protection as like a limited liability company. I think we can skip this slide for tonight. Okay, any questions on co-ops overall? These are down and dirty, like, let's move fast. Not as fast as you did, Mayor. We're moving pretty fast.
I usually go, who knows that they're a member of the co-op? Who's a member of a credit union? There you go. Who's a member of
Rocky Mountain?
Rocky Mountain. There you go. Who has gone to the Bozeman Food Co-op down in Bozeman and shopped there, and they talk you into the membership? Yeah. So those are all different types of co-ops in Montana that you can benefit from as a member.
So cooperative solutions. So last year we did spend some time and we created a housing cooperative study, because a lot of the housing co-ops that we see in the U.S. are actually more in larger urban areas. So we've been working with Cooperative Development Foundation. They are a national organization that we're partnering with to look at rural solutions. And we do have some of these ideas. So these are ideas. These are not saying this is what you guys do. We are presenting ideas and concepts, and then you decide if you want to move forward with them, and you decide which ones. So Community Land Trust, we do have Riverside Crossing is a 55 and plus active senior housing co-op. It's the only one in the state of Montana. The Council of Aging in their community had received a large sum of money and estate, and they were able to turn that over, and they leased the land at a very affordable rate to their co-op. So the Council of Aging acts as a trust, and then they built the co-op on top of it, keeping that land more affordable. We're seeing that done in Missoula and two other housing programs. And then we've been having discussions with Trust Montana on what does that look like to expand that. But if you had somebody that wanted to give an estate or you leave their property to the town, that's a good way to partner and do a partnership on that front. Workforce housing co-ops, there's a typo on that. This one, we don't have one in the state of Montana. These are actually really cool. There's one in Toronto. I know, big city, but it's really an awesome program. They created a worker housing cooperative where the workers of a hospital came together and helped purchase a apartment building. And the hospital also did it in some other businesses, and then they're leasing it back to their workforce. So that's kind of a cool way, especially if you are, I see this being discussed more in like areas of Whitefish and Red Lodge, those that have a lot of transitional housing happening. Traditional housing co-ops are owned and operated by the people that live in them. And so these are probably the most common ones. Minnesota has probably the highest capita of housing co-ops. That's when people come together, they pool their resources, they either purchase a property, they do infill within a community, but they own the buildings and they live in those buildings. And that's a big difference from like a condo association. You own what's in the four walls in a condo. In a co-op, in a housing co-op, you own a share of the entire facility with the right to live in a unit. So you have the share is where you own, not the deed to a unit. And then opportunity development co-ops or investment co-ops. This is where communities and where we're really seeing a growth in Montana is a lot of times it's not the people that is concerned citizens that are bringing us in, business owners that are bringing us in and saying we need housing for our workforce, for our youth, for our seniors. How can we create a co-op to address this? These are not people that are going to be living in those housing units that we create as a cooperative, but they are concerned people that want to be part of it. So the investment co-op model allows you to pool your funds and invest in housing, or you can invest in a variety of different things. We have some revolving loan funds being developed. We have one that formed to create where they want to buy blighted commercial and residential properties and refurbish them and put them back on the market to try to help sustain their community that way. So this is probably the one that we're seeing the most flex and the most growth in when it comes to community solutions.
And the co-ops are created by whoever is going to own it.
Yeah.
So if you're wanting to create a housing co-op in the traditional sense, then the people building it and planning it and having these discussions need to be the people who want to live in that community. If the people who want to start this co-op are not planning on necessarily living in it, but want to be involved in creating a solution for their community, an investment co-op is an opportunity for them to do that. Because it has to be who's going to own it that creates it.
Yeah. Well, we've just seen it happen too many times where we've had a group of people saying, we've got this great idea and we're going to create this co-op, and then they go to the people that they want to hand it over to and they completely miss the mark. So if you don't have the people that are willing to own it and live in it in housing, we have enough experience doing this long that unless the people that are going to be there are going to be the members, we usually try to kind of back you off a little bit. So I think, can you go back one? So different types of housing, these are the traditional housing ones. You can do market equity, so that is fair market, whatever your market price values are. You can do shared and limited, those are they're a little different but very similar. Limited equity, I get in trouble with the housing world for saying this. I'm not the biggest fan of the limited equity for the simple fact you put a limitation on equity, whereas one area that we grow equity is in our home, so limiting it has advantage. Just be cautious that you're not limiting people to always stay there and that you're not seeing that cycle coming out. Student housing, those are really interesting ones. Those are where students actually own the cooperative and they lease a building, usually from a nonprofit. And then leaseholder is kind of similar more to the investment model, but where an organization owns the facility and then a co-op either leases it or a group of renters rent it. like the individual renters are part of the co-op and own it. So it just plays with it a little bit. And because we have such flexibility in our co-op laws, we can get pretty creative as long as you don't try to treat it as a charity.
Yeah, the part about each state has different laws becomes a big factor. Montana can do a lot of this stuff, but don't get ideas from other states and go, we should do it that way. Just know it'll have to be tailored to that state.
I've already covered that. And you just did that. And we talked about community land trust. I'm not pushing that. It is just a value. Do you guys have a community land trust in Townsend?
No.
Okay. Do you have a community foundation? Okay. Those are just good for me to know. And then we have senior cooperative housing. We spent a lot of time in our study, and these are actually excerpts from the study directly, guys. You can have in your senior cooperative housing some really cool concepts to it. And so if a senior need is here, this is an area of high growth, and some of our most, a number of co-ops are senior focused. However, again, if you put limitation on those, seniors have been living a little bit longer than what they were projected to, per se. And so, can we go back? So what's happened is that limited equity, we actually have co-ops now removing limited equity from theirs because their seniors are starting to age out, but they need their second, third, fourth phases, and they don't have the equity because they've limited it in their co-op so long. So coming back to that. And then what we also have seen, and this is happening more in Minnesota, where they actually have senior housing co-ops, but then they create a worker-owned like healthcare co-op to serve them. And so you have these two co-ops side by side. Home health care is a big area. I think we'll start seeing more and more in Montana too, as we know our senior care facilities are not necessarily sustainable in the current model. And so looking at how we can do healthcare on top of it would be good. It keeps jumping on me.
I know, it keeps getting, it's fun.
And we can go through some of these. These are just examples, and you guys can't really see them from up here. 75 York in Minnesota is a senior housing. They were one of them that had limited equity, and they also just went to a certain age and they didn't have any services. And so the co-op voted, and they had a parcel of land that was theirs. They actually attracted a business to come in and put a senior care facility next to it. Their co-op members do not own it, but their co-op members have first right to go in there, so they weren't splitting up spouses that way too. Common Roots Rental Equity Co-op. This is an investment hybrid model in Traverse, Michigan. They have housing, rental housing. They also have storefronts. They're like creating their whole town into a co-op, which is, for me that lives and breathes co-op, I kind of geek out on a little bit. But that one's pretty cool. And then the Sangudo Opportunity Development, the guy I mentioned earlier, Dan, they're kind of the godfathers of the investment co-op. So Sangudo in Alberta, it's a small hamlet. They created an investment co-op to actually attract a meat producer there, or a meat processor there, because they desperately needed that. They've now gone through 3 or 4 different businesses, and now they're moving into housing to supply workforce housing for those businesses that they've helped create and incubate.
So the communities invested their money together, bought a space and got it all set up, and then attracted a butcher, a meat processor, helped him get the business up and running. And then he bought it back from them, and they took that money and all the returns